Even worse that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
Hey, we are all queued up again and ready to go with some straight talk about your retirement finances and investments, where we help people discover, protect, and share true financial independence at GenWealth Financial Advisors. This is the Get Ready for the Future show, so settle in. For the next half hour or so, we're going to be answering your questions about money. My name is Scott Inman, one of your hosts, and the other is John Shrewsbury, one of GenWealth's co-founders. As we sit here mid-July, dog days of summer creeping in.
Yes, it is.
Especially if you're here in Central Arkansas, we're looking at heat indexes above 100. We throw that term around, dog days of summer. A couple of years ago, I actually looked it up.
Did you?
It meant. Yeah. Do you know what it means?
I have no idea.
Or where it comes from, I should say.
I have no idea.
So it's actually about a constellation.
Really?
So it's actually about astronomy in a way. It goes all the way back to ancient civilizations. So there is a constellation that appears in the sky this time of year called Canis Major. So pick up on the Canis part.
Yeah.
Canine. It looks like a dog. It's shaped like a dog, and it appeared in the sky typically during the hottest parts of the year, and that's where the phrase dog days of summer comes from. Interesting.
Well, I'll bring us into the 20th, maybe 21st century. I can't remember which. But, there's an Eagles song that has a line in it that said, I heard a wise man say that every dog would have his day.
Yeah.
But nobody told me that the days would get so long.
Yeah.
And so
right.
it's kind of an interesting twist on the dog days of summer. But it is definitely here and definitely hot.
Yeah. And I think, the reason I bring it up is to kind of guide us into our question and answers today. It is kind of a stagnant time for people, right? I mean, by this time of year, late July rolling in, school's going to be starting soon for people who have kids in school. The vacation has likely already been taken, right? And you're just kind of stagnant. Things get slow. And it can really be appropriate to kind of think about that from a financial standpoint. Where are you stuck? Where are you stagnant? And really not thinking about how to move forward.
Inertia takes over with a lot of people, Scott, and if you're not careful, that inertia can turn into a detriment to, and life has a rhythm, and I've noticed this is our 20th anniversary of GenWealth, and probably around the 19th anniversary of this show on broadcast radio anyway, and I've noticed that there's just a sequential rhythm of people that they do things at certain times of the year, and they don't do things at certain times of the year. But you can't let that rhythm mess you up as far as your focus on financial independence is concerned.
Yeah, so I said at the open, we're queued up and ready to go. Hope you are too. Just settle in and listen to some of the comments here that we have about the questions we've received. And I think there's going to be some action steps for you, some points of action that can get you out of a rut if that's where you are. First up, it's Phil from Bentonville. I've got $500,000 in a 401k, but I'm burned out and considering a career break. I'm 53. Can I step away for a while without wrecking my future? So what happens if you hit pause in your 50s? Let's talk about the cost of a career break and how to come back strong. So, the first thing I think about, a lot of people, if they're burned out and they're considering a career change, but you don't often think about the consequences of a career break. So you got to be pretty confident that you're going to be able to handle that break from an income perspective. And I think that's the first piece for me, is determining where is your income source, because if Phil's 53, we hope he's not thinking about pulling from that $500,000.
Yeah, and let's kind of back up and do some math on this for just a second. The good news for Phil is that compound interest is on your side, Phil, because $500,000 will grow over the next few years, and you could double that money between now and the time that you potentially could retire. The bad news is, depending on when you retire, that still might not be enough, and depending on what kind of income that you need. As you said, Scott, Phil does not mention an income source. So if he takes a career break, What pays the bills? What pays the mortgage? What pays the food, clothing, transportation, shelter, all the basic living expenses? Maybe Phil is married and has a wife that has a really good job. And if that's the case, then maybe they're okay. But he doesn't really indicate that. So that would be something that I think is definitely a big deal. But as you mentioned, don't think about using the 401k as an income replacement for you during this break. Number one reason that you don't want to do that, penalties prior to 55 or 59 and a half, since Phil is 53, would apply to using that 401k money. And so that would be enough of a reason to not do that. But Scott, there's several other reasons that you may want to think through this a little bit more.
Yeah, and I was thinking about a client that I have that is a little bit different circumstances. He's a tad older, so he's not 53. I think he's in his late 50s, and he and his wife have a lot more saved than $500,000, so it's a different scenario, but he is taking a break, and it was a little bit of a forced break. He had a buyout opportunity, and he took the opportunity to do that. They have a plan in place. I think that's the other thing I would come back to here with Phil is we had a retirement income plan built for this client to retire at 60. And he's about 3 or 4 years away from that right now. So things have changed, and we have had to update that plan and show him the impact of potentially taking money out. But he also has a spouse who is working and has employment, and they are living mostly, at least for now, on the severance package that he got and his wife's income. Now, at the end of that, he's going to have to make some decisions. That's how he got his career break. So different scenario. But the point here is if you have a retirement income plan built, Phil, then you're going to know where you stand, what your future retirement is going to look like, and the impact of stepping away for a brief time and not contributing to your 401k, and not only that, but not receiving the employer match. There's a lot of money left on the table if you take a career break.
Yeah, that's the thing that kind of gives me heartburn about any of this, Scott, is that when you take a career break, then you're breaking away from the mechanism that has allowed you to fund that $500,000 that you have in your retirement program. Now, assuming that you have an income source from somewhere else, wife or whatever, and you're going to be okay during this break and you're not going to need to touch the $500,000, then compound interest is going to kick in at 8% rate of return. By the time that you roll down the road at 62, that $500,000 at an 8% rate of return would be more like $1 million. But then the big question, as I alluded to earlier, is $1 million enough? Well, most people think, yeah, $1 million is enough. It is if you have an average income of the average Arkansan, but if you have an above average income, then it might not be enough. And that is where your contributions and the company match come into play. Not getting those contributions and the company match really allows you to just run on the power of compound interest, and that may or may not be enough. Scott, as you have alluded to, there is no substitute for planning in this situation because you're asking a very specific question on a very specific set of circumstances, and that's where you really need to be specific in your plans going forward.
We're going to finish up on this question in just a minute, but I'm going to pick up on something you just said when you said $1 million might be enough. It might not be enough.
Right.
I think that resonates with people listening today because it is kind of a milestone that has historically been thought of. If I become a millionaire, I have everything set. And that depends. A lot of people could probably have it set with less than that, depending on guaranteed income sources. Because as we say on this show all the time, retirement is essentially an income problem. And everybody's income situation is different, depending on what you need to pay expenses, depending on what you want to do in retirement, and depending on the size of your guaranteed income. If you have a couple of Social Security checks and a pension, that looks different than one person living on a Social Security check. So we live in a comparison society, right? We want to know, okay, at 53, how much should I have? At 45. And there are all kinds of things out there on the internet that'll tell you that. And if you don't have a plan, that might be helpful. But until you get a unique plan designed for you, really all of that is just words in the wind. It's words in the wind.
It's speculation. And realistically, when you stop and think about this $1 million hypothetically that he might have at age 62, Again, it really depends on what your demand for income is. If you have a low demand for income, then that $1 million you may be Cadillac at that particular point in time, but you may not be. It may be a situation where you need to really get a good rate of return on that money, or you need to have a plan that takes into account the ability to increase your income over time, reflective of inflation. It has to be able to protect that money so you don't run out of money before you run out of time. So very critical decision for Phil. Phil, we would recommend that you reach out to us here at GenWealth because we can help you do that very specific planning and answer this question for you under your circumstances.
Our planning process is called the GenWealth Ready to Retire process. And Phil, if you'd like to walk through it, or anybody else listening or watching today, all you have to do to get started is send us an email or make a phone call. Easy to do, right? You can send the email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com, or you can make a phone call, 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. Wherever you are hearing or watching today, you can get started.
Scott, let's talk for just a brief second about what happens when you make that phone call, because oftentimes people think, I'm just going to call and schedule time to go in.
Okay.
Well, that is a little bit more involved in that we want to know a little bit about you so we can match you up with the right advisor. Alicia Macomb is working on those phone calls. I'm sorry, Alicia Bailey now. She just got married, and Alicia Bailey is working on those phone calls these days. And Alicia does a wonderful job. She's been doing that for us for a long period of time, amongst other things that Alicia does. But there is a little bit of conversation that needs to go on, so we match you with the right advisor based on your circumstances, and then we can go to work to try to solve your problem.
Yep. Great advice there. Great thoughts for you to make that phone call or send an email. We also want to remind you, are you concerned about the market? Isn't that kind of a standard yes? I mean, everybody's always concerned about the market. Volatility has slowed over the last month or so, right? But we have experienced it in abundance in 2025. So what's next? What does the second half of 2025 potentially look like? We're going to be talking about that tomorrow afternoon. Now, let me be very clear when I say tomorrow afternoon. We are live streaming on Wednesday, July 16th. So if you're listening on podcast or listening to the GenWealth Radio Hour, that ship has sailed. You're not going to be able to get into that. But tomorrow, July 17th at 4 p.m., we've got the mid-year market check-in. What's next for your money in 2025? And it's with CIO Andrew Beatty. So we want to encourage you to register for that. If you are curious, want to hear a little market talk, investment talk, that's coming your way tomorrow, Thursday, July 17th at 4 o'clock. You can register by going to getreadyforthefuture.com/academy. Next up, it's Jennifer via text. We're 61 and 62 and just paid off our mortgage. Should we keep aggressively saving or start shifting toward preserving what we've already built? It's great to be debt-free, but staring down retirement, do you keep building or shift into defensive mode? The right move depends on a key factor or two, so let's talk about it. First of all, the thing that really stares at me here, John, in the question is, should we keep aggressively saving or start shifting toward preserving what we've already built? I'm not sure it's an either or in there.
It really is not. I think aggressive savings, meaning you're saving a lot.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about aggressive investing, that's a completely different story.
Maybe that's what you meant.
Maybe so. But if you are aggressively saving, that means you're committing a lot of money toward your savings goal, in this case, retirement. I think you can do both of these. Being mortgage-free is great. The question is really, will you be financially independent? Because that's the key. Financial independence is the key. Debt freedom is good. Financial independence is the key. By the way, as we said, that aggressive savings really is much more in terms of how much you're saving. Now, we would say that you need to be balanced in your approach to retirement, because at 61 and 62, you are at the essence of being on the threshold of retirement. That threshold really does demand that you take a balanced approach. It doesn't mean that you are very conservative because you've got inflation that's working against you in terms of being conservative. If you are conservative, then you're probably not going to keep up with inflation. You need to have an element of growth in your plan. And if that element of growth in your plan is absent, then you're going to find yourself behind the curve in terms of income in the future. So that balanced approach would mean that part of your retirement savings is dedicated to something very conservative, but part of your retirement savings is more balanced and more aggressive in terms of maybe conservatively aggressive, if I could use that word, more of a growth in income, maybe a little bit of growth category, nothing aggressive at this particular point in your life. But I do believe that approach has to be the way that you play this, or you're going to end up later in life really being sorry that you didn't have a growth element.
Look, I think if you have paid off your mortgage, Jennifer, you have taken a giant leap toward financial independence, but we don't know if you're there yet. That comes with the planning process. And what did we say in our last discussion, in the last question? Retirement is essentially an income problem. So we don't know anything about your income needs and desires. We know that the need got a lot less because you're not paying a mortgage anymore. But do you have enough guaranteed income to cover your basic expenses in retirement? Let's go ahead and assume that box has been checked. That's a great first step. But then you're going to need to use your retirement savings to provide the discretionary income above and beyond that. And when John talks about tweaking that investment strategy, the big reason that you need to do that is one of the three big risks in retirement that every retiree will face, and it is called timing risk or sequence risk. It's the long version of that is sequence of return risk. And what we're talking about there is if you stay aggressively invested as you enter your retirement years and begin to make withdrawals from your retirement savings because now you're using it as spendable income, and the market has a severe correction, which, by the way, is way more common than anybody actually wants to admit. 10% corrections happen often once a year on average. Now let that sink in. So if you're taking money out of an aggressive investment, it's all in on the market, and we drop 10% or potentially 20% and enter a bear market, which also is fairly common. Every 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a bear market. So that can happen at any point in the early years of retirement. And the data shows that not only the year you retire would make a difference, the month you retire would make a difference if you compared it to somebody who got upside for the first couple of years of retirement versus downside in an equally, the investments were exactly the same, or the investment portfolio was exactly the same. So that's why we're talking about taking some of the risk off of the money you are sending to yourself or receiving as income in the early years of retirement.
Yeah, Scott, that is a big gambit. You know, it really does put at risk your legacy money. It really puts at risk your ability to increase your income over time. And so that's why we caution people all the time about not getting, really fat and happy, so to speak, about what returns you're getting in the market, because the market's been pretty good as of late. But you have to think about what if, and that what if has dire consequences on your overall wealth building ability through your retirement. So we think the three big risks, which are timing risk, inflation risk, and longevity risk, all of those things have to be addressed at this stage of life, and you cannot ignore those just because you haven't had to deal with those in your accumulation years. They are huge risks that are before you right now, and that's the advice that we would give this couple in terms of approaching their investment strategy. Continue to save very aggressively in terms of the volume of money, the amount of money that you're putting in, but take a balanced approach in terms of your investment strategy.
Yeah, and one final thought on that. We don't even know how much Jennifer and her husband have saved for retirement, so we can't really project, are they good? Are they on track for the retirement they want? The planning process will tell you that, because if they are on track and they already have a retirement savings that's going to be what they need when they reach that retirement finish line, then maybe that aggressive savings could actually be in piling up cash. because that helps in many ways, right? Obviously, you can't have too much. Well, you can't have too much cash. I think there is that possibility. I believe you can. But if you have a large emergency fund and it's prepared to buy and make lump sum purchases like replacing a car in those early years of retirement, isn't it best to be able to take it from after-tax dollars? And if you have a stack of cash, it gives you another source of blending when it comes to tax planning.
Yes, absolutely. And tax planning is a big deal that we engage in here at GenWealth. We help you to look at that and say, how can we minimize your taxes 100% legit, 100% legal, but what methods can we use to reduce the amount of tax legally that you pay to the federal government and put yourself in a position of having more spendable income?
Hey, we'd love to send you a free Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler for being named our question of the week. That's an encouragement, isn't it, to step out and send in your financial question? I talk to people that listen to the Get Ready for the Future Show, and I should start asking them, well, why haven't you sent in a question? Because they should. Maybe some of them have. But if you could send us a question, anything that's on your mind, and it's our question of the week, we could send you a Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler for free. All you have to do to send in that question is write down the email, show@getreadyforthefuture.com, or the phone number, 501-381-5228. Again, it's 501-381-5228. You can leave a voicemail at that number, or you can shoot us a text and send in your question that way. Time for our next one on today's show. It's from Joseph in Little Rock. I've saved $600,000 and I'm 59, but I still have $25,000 in credit card debt. Should I use savings to wipe it out or keep plugging away with payments? Pretty good sized nest egg there, but pretty good sized debt. So which one takes priority? Let's look at how to clear high interest debt without derailing your retirement. And that's the key pivot point here for Joseph. When he says, should I use savings to wipe it out? I hope he's not talking about savings in his retirement plan.
I am going to take a baseball bat to the Dave Ramsey philosophy on this. Probably kind of knock some people crazy out there in listener land as well. But I don't think you take that money, particularly if it is retirement money, and pay off that debt. I know it's credit card debt. I know it's bad debt. I know that the interest is probably eating this guy alive. But here's the deal. $600,000 at 59 is okay, but it's not financial independence.
Potentially behind.
That's right. Mm-hmm. What I would say that you should do is to just knuckle up and add more money to your debt elimination program. If this is one credit card and this is all you have, whatever your monthly payment is on that credit card, find a way to double it. Find a way to triple it. Do something in your cash flow to address that credit card. Don't throw good money after bad, meaning taking money away from your retirement, because that money that you have for retirement is going to grow between 59 and the time that you retire. It's also going to be there to generate income for you in retirement. So you're really kind of cutting your nose off to spite your face. And when you do something like that, your close proximity to retirement, and so you already have this limited amount of money, Scott. And I feel like that the mantra of pay off debt, pay off debt, pay off debt really can work against you when you're in a situation like this because of the proximity to retirement.
Yeah, and let's be honest, paying off $25,000 in credit card debt, if you really do that, if you really buckle down and you add to it and you use the snowball approach where you take something else, we don't know if you have some other debt, but if you have some other debt that's about to be paid off, and you roll what you were paying once the debt is paid off into the next debt in line, it won't take very long. I mean, we've done lots of debt snowball or debt elimination plans that with people with a lot more than $25,000 in credit card debt. And really, if you show them that and you have an end date, a month and a year that you know it's going to be over with, first of all, that's motivation, right? It shows you a plan. It shows you a map to get to where you want to go. But it should not really take that long, Joseph, to get rid of $25,000 in credit card debt. In my experience, and I mean this with clients and probably to some degree in my own life, I have a friend who once told me that he leaves his credit card maxed out. And I said, well, why in the world would you do that? He said, because if I pay it off, my wife's just going to max it out again. Now think about, okay, so that's funny,
Okay.
and there's no logic in that, but it's the reality of what's probably happening here, right?
Yeah.
It's not that he can't get rid of the 25, it's that he can't stop using the credit card.
Yeah, that demands a marriage counselor as opposed to a financial advisor. But here's the other thing that I really want to emphasize here, and this is really important. People often do this mental accounting, and they say, well, I have $25,000 of credit card debt. I'll just take $25,000 out of my retirement and pay for it. No, you won't. The government is going to tax you on that $25,000. You might have to withdraw as much as $40,000 to net $25,000 in order to fully eliminate that credit card. So here's what happens. You pull $25,000, they hold taxes, you only pay off, I don't know, $15,000 of the credit card debt. You still have 10, and then you go, well, I need to do something. And it just kind of snowballs on you at that particular point. Have a disciplined approach to this, Scott. I think that is completely the key. If you are legitimately disciplined at throwing extra money, and look, we all have some wiggle room in our budget. There are things that we spend money on that are discretionary, meaning that you can do without them. And you have to prioritize your spending and say, the number one priority for me is to get rid of this debt. So out of my paycheck, I'm going to dedicate X number of dollars, whatever that payment is, times 2 or times 3 or whatever your plan is. Go ahead and do that. Leave the $600,000 to work for you, because you're going to need that as you get older. This is wisdom that you cannot argue with, despite the fact that you might be paying some interest on that $25,000.
We want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content you can't find anywhere else to help you discover, protect, and share true financial independence. Just search for GenWealth Financial Advisors. Last up, our final question. Sandra from Benton. We're 66 and retiring next year. Do we need to keep emergency savings in retirement, or will our investment accounts cover any surprises? We know rainy days don't stop when the paychecks do, so we're going to talk a little bit why emergency savings still matter even in retirement and how they should be positioned. You know, I had a client that once had his emergency savings in a brokerage account, right? And it was invested in growth mutual funds. Mm-hmm. And we had that discussion, and we had to kind of unwind that and reposition it, because you don't want. So the answer to Sandra here very clearly up front is you do want to keep emergency savings, and you don't want to have your investment accounts cover any expenses. And the primary reason is what we talked about earlier in the show, John, and that's the timing risk. And when it comes to emergencies, there is no time. You don't know when you're going to have to pull that. So you may be forced, if you have, or if you're counting on your emergency savings to be in your investment accounts and they are in higher risk growth investments, you cannot control two things you need to control in retirement. And that's what you sell and when you sell it.
That's exactly right, Scott. You know, since this is the 20th year of GenWealth, let's do a little retro history here. Let's go back to the beginning of GenWealth. Very early on in our careers at GenWealth, we had a video called The Cow Story, and it was teaching dollar cost averaging. We used cows as an analogy for dollar cost averaging. So I'm going to update this for this particular situation. I'm going to use a cow. If you have a milk cow, if you go buy a milk cow and you're getting good fresh milk from that cow, the last thing you want to do is go and kill that cow to eat beef, because you interrupt the flow of milk. And I don't think in this particular situation that you want your milk money, so to speak, the genesis of that, the source of that milk money being disturbed because you have an emergency. I think that there's still going to be emergencies when you retire. That's very clear. That happens. Tires go out. Engines go out in cars. You have a problem at the house. The air conditioner goes out. Whatever the case may be, you don't need to slowly eat away at the engine that is producing the income for you in retirement by taking away from your retirement accounts. That's why we recommend that you have 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Not income, but living expenses set aside for emergencies. That gives you the ability to keep your hands off of the cow that is producing the milk that you're consuming every month in terms of retirement income. That's the bottom line.
And I think here, when you have a plan, when you have a retirement income plan that shows you what your portfolio can sustain from a withdrawal position or perspective, it opens up some doors potentially if you don't need your entire portfolio to produce that income. So I don't know. Here's my point, John. I don't know how many millions of dollars that we send out on a monthly basis to our clients, but it's large.
Yes, it's probably close to $20 million a month.
So our clients are actually making withdrawals, right?
Yes.
And I would say to a large extent, they don't need every dollar of that.
Right.
And when you think about the fact that the inherited IRA rule has changed, right?
Yep.
When you move this money, pass this money on, your kids are going to get hit with a big time tax bomb. When you think about RMD age continuing to be pushed up to eventually 75 years old, if you don't tap your own IRA until then, how big could it be? And then you're not in control of your tax situation anymore. The government is going to tell you how much you have to take out on an annual basis. So if you can make a retirement income plan that stays in the tax bracket you need it to stay in, right? Which is the lowest you can possibly figure out to do. Then why not fill up that bracket? Maybe take a little more income than you actually need on a month-to-month basis and build up that cash.
Yeah, and I think that one of our favorite things to recommend to people is to have a Roth IRA.
Yeah.
And a Roth IRA, and you can invest it however you want to. I would not aggressively invest it if it is your emergency money, but that Roth IRA allows you to make a withdrawal tax-free in retirement, but it is going to be taxable to you if you take it from your traditional IRA account. We would prefer that this be non-qualified money in a money market account that you can access, that's earning some interest, but you can access in a quick hurry if you need it. But Roth IRA also kind of serves the same purpose if you are conservatively invested in that Roth IRA.
Yeah, so when you think about building that all together, Sandra, you definitely want to keep your emergency savings in cash or in a very low risk vehicle, and typically in the bank account, or it could be in a brokerage account if you have a money market mutual fund, and you could potentially treat that like a high yield savings. Maybe you're going to get something on your money, but on any money that is invested and in a retirement account and could be taxable, you want that to be in a retirement income plan that is coming to you on a monthly basis and not have to get in a position where you have to sell when you don't want to and take a certain amount out that you don't want to take.
Scott, this points out a very common problem in folks' thinking. It is kind of that same thing that I talked about earlier in one of our other questions, and it's called mental accounting. But people think, I've got $1 and I'm going to make it do this, and I'm going to make it do this, and oh, by the way, I'm going to make it do this. That dollar can only do one thing.
Right.
And so you have to dedicate other dollars to be able to do the other things. Doubling up on those dollars, somebody's going to come up short at some particular point in time. I would submit to you that the thing that you do not want to come up short on is your retirement income. The ability to increase your retirement income to keep up with inflation over time, the ability to not run out of money before you run out of time. All of those things are critical factors when it comes to your retirement income planning that the emergency fund should not interfere with.
That's really good. You know, every dollar is not equal, right? It depends on how's it going to be taxed. How's it invested? Every dollar is different. That's so good. As we hear the final bell there, it is time for our final thoughts and time to wrap the show up. John, what do you got?
Scott, I think as we kind of roll through these questions, there's sort of a common theme, and that is I got to get my thinking right because I've been thinking about this and I've been thinking about that. Well, if you are trying to get your own thinking right, that may be a long journey for you to be on. I think that probably the best thing that you could do is to come alongside a trusted advisor, someone that is, number one, very well educated and well skilled and experienced at doing the type of thing that we're talking about here today, and that is getting you to financial independence and creating a financial independence plan for you that it covers all of the questions questions. When you ask specific questions, those are very legitimate, but you have to thematically think about this in a holistic way. If you don't think about it and look at it in the big picture, then you're going to run into problems down the road. And I would think that the best thing to do is to pick up the phone, give us a call here at GenWealth. Let us help you with that retirement income plan so you can be on the road to financial independence.
My final thought is for our live viewing audience today on our live stream. Tomorrow afternoon, it's the mid-year market check-in. What's next for your money in 2025 with CIO Andrew Beatty? So if you're curious about what the projections look like for the economy, for the markets, join us tomorrow, July 17th at 4 o'clock. You can register for free at getreadyforthefuture.com/academy. We hope you'll join us tomorrow afternoon. That is all the time we have for this week Get Ready for the Future show. A reminder about that number to call or text in your question. You can leave a voicemail or shoot us a text at 501-381-5228, and you might just get a free Get Ready for the Future show tumbler for doing it. We'll see you next week.
The GenWealth financial team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.